Israel and the United States have put together a program to distribute food.
Yes.
Because they don't want the UN to be a part of it. They want to do it themselves. But that program is what everyone is saying is failing. In fact,
not everyone.
Far-right MAGA troll Scott Jennings is at it again, spreading disinformation and propaganda on Abby Phillip's show on CNN, this time over Israel and Gaza. I'm going to show you some clips from a very heated discussion on Abby Phillip's show that included Scott Jennings, Kat Abu, and others. I will share my thoughts on this as well. Let's check it out together.
Why are 3 of those 4 aid centers all in the extreme south of Gaza on the border of Egypt? Because Israel's own defense minister has said, we are implementing the Trump plan. Gazans can only live on 12% of Gaza now, which is already one of the most overcrowded places on earth, because Israel is facilitating the Trump plan, moving the population into a tiny area, making life so hellish and so miserable that they hope that as many people who don't die will leave. That's official Israeli policy.
Release the hostages, create a ceasefire, end the war, get back to normal. That's the plan.
What is normal here, though?
Look,
Donald Trump just
listen, one kazam here in New York, I can tell you what the people in New York would do. They get kazams every day in those little towns.
Gaza was under Israeli occupation. It has been under Israeli occupation since 1967. You know, most of the people in Gaza are not from Gaza. They're from families of refugees that were expelled from Israel in 1948. That's where they're there in the first place.
Let me let Kat have a word in. Go ahead.
I am from one of those families. My father's parents were Nakba survivors. I do not want Israeli children to live in fear, and I don't want Gazan children to starve to death. And there is no enemy of either state that could want me to wish that or excuse the starvation of children. It is that simple. Food is being blocked. It is being blocked. This is a man-made humanitarian disaster. It could stop at any point. We could be putting pressure on this.
They launched missiles from hospitals. They launched missiles from preschools.
Okay, there is nothing. There is nothing.
Hold on a
no
second.
agency that could excuse this.
Let me ask you to respond exactly to what she said. What is the rationale for blocking food?
I don't believe food is big. There's 950 trucks sitting there with food rotting right now that the UN won't distribute. Why is the UN in cahoots with Hamas? I don't understand.
What are you?
I don't understand.
Scott, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
There's 950 trucks
Scott,
with
I'm not
food
sure what
sitting
you're
at this
referring
moment.
to. Israel and the United States have put together a program to distribute food.
Yes.
Because they don't want the UN to be a part of it. They want to do it themselves. But that program is what everyone is saying is failing. In fact,
not everyone.
In fact,
the starving children are.
There is a statement here from 100 human rights groups that says, as the Israeli government's siege starves the people of Gaza, aid workers are now joining the same food lines, risking being shot to feed their families. With supply now totally depleted, humanitarian organizations, they're witnessing their own colleagues and partners waste away before their eyes. The government of Israel's restrictions, delays, and fragmentation under its total siege have created chaos, starvation, and death. Again, this is within the power of to alleviate this. And even if the idea is that Hamas is stealing some of the aid, the quantity of aid, Scott, that is coming into Gaza right now is not even close to what is necessary to feed the population. So it would be one thing if they were giving as much food as was necessary and Hamas was stealing all of it, but that's not what's happening.
Look, regarding the United States, to Senator Flake's point, regarding our position in this, I think the administration's support of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation effort, I think they're the only people right now that are actually successfully delivering aid in a way that it is not being stolen. I think one of the main problems is the aid that's going in. It's being looted and stolen by the terrorists.
I mean, Scott, based on
GHF has done a good job.
Just one second, because based on, I just played the Cindy McCain sound, and I almost feel like we might need to play it again because she's being very clear. She runs an organization that knows how to distribute food. And she is saying there are other ways to do this that are better and more effective, and they are not being allowed to do it. Why are they not being allowed to do it?
I don't think Donald Trump wants children in Gaza to starve.
Why?
Before we hear the rest of what Jeff Flake has to say, I just have to say, Abby Phillip says to Scott Jennings that everyone says this is not working. And Scott Jennings says, well, not everyone, implying that he thinks what is being done is working. But when people are literally starving, how is what's being done working? You have to do something different. If people are starving, if you're trying to get aid in and food and people are starving, something is not going correctly. And of course, he's going to just say, well, everything that Israel and the United States are doing is perfectly fine. It's just Hamas is stealing the food. As I said at the top of the video, Scott Jennings is a propagandist. He goes on CNN every night and spreads misinformation and disinformation.
Why did he just literally incinerate $800 million worth of emergency food? Why did he do that?
I'm simply saying that the U.S. could do more to put pressure on Israel, to allow the food in and to be distributed. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
I don't think
the U.S. walking away from negotiations is just a negotiation tactic, because we got to be back at the table.
I was going to say, we are debating basic human dignity here.
I also will say that, obviously, the negotiations around the end to the war are important, but they are actually separate, because the humanitarian situation, there are rules of the road about how you conduct wars. And the starvation of populations is not part of the rules of the road.
Yeah,
regardless, hold on, Scott, regardless of whether or not they come to the negotiating table and negotiate a peace deal, the question will remain: who is going to feed the population in Gaza?
Because when you're delivering aid and Hamas is looting it and shooting people trying to get it, that means the war is still going, and it's hard to deliver it, I would think.
Every single thing that you've said is an Israeli government talking point. The question is, if you're so confident, with all due respect, I've suffered a lot more from Hamas people I know than you have. With all due respect, if you want to test these things, why don't you call for Israel to allow Western journalists in to go and check for themselves to see whether you're right?
You want me to call on?
Why don't you ask Israel to allow Western journalists to go, not to micromanage, to go?
Scott Jennings, this asshole, says, you want me to tell a foreign government to micromanage their war effort? Yeah, a foreign government that the United States funds, and the United States has paid for all of this. So the United States does not have a right to say to Israel, this is what you're going to do. And if you don't do that, then we cut off all the funding. Of course, we should have cut off the funding a long time ago. The United States government, I'm talking about the United States taxpayers. But this creep sighs and rolls his eyes and shrugs and says, what can we do to Israel? This is their war effort. Ted Cruz said the same thing to Tucker Carlson when Tucker Carlson talked about putting pressure on Israel in other ways. And Ted Cruz said, well, we can't tell them what to do. And Tucker Carlson said, we're paying them. Why would we not tell them what to do? I mean, first of all, the idea that the United States is still funding all of this is insane. But it's almost more insane that you would question that the country that's paying for all of this would not, no pun intended, call the shots and say, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're not going to do. And if you don't like it, tough, we will withdraw all of our money and we will no longer give you weapons. And you're not our ally anymore. It's just insanity. And the difference to me between right and left is clearly on display here. You have Katabu, progressive, running for Congress, who is saying, I don't want Israeli children to live in fear. I don't want Gazan children to starve. But Scott Jennings, and we're going to see more as this goes along, can only focus on one side. I really wish that these hosts like Abby Phillip, and she does a good job here as we go along. But I really wish they would say, which life is more valuable to you, Scott Jennings? Is it an Israeli child or is it a Gazan child? Or are they equal? And I think he would spin and deflect rather than just say, it doesn't matter whether it's an Israeli or a Gazan. All of these children's lives are precious. It's just disgusting.
On the ground and do reporting, which is what organizations like CNN do, and look for themselves.
Peter, it's war. They invaded Israel.
Yes, there is a war. Israel. What Hamas did on October 7th were war crimes. They were utterly despicable and immoral. It is also the case that Palestinians have been under occupation under a condition that even Israel's own human rights organizations call apartheid. Israel's own human rights organizations. Since 1967. That is the reality that existed on October 6th. And if you want to keep everybody safer, just as you were saying, if you want to keep Israeli Jews safer, many Israeli Jews are very, very close to me, including my own family. If you want to keep them safe, you have to also keep Palestinians safe. And Palestinians will not be safe if they are under conditions of bondage and apartheid. They have to be free.
Our fates are intertwined. There is no other way about it. And if you want a safe Israelis, if you want safe Palestinians, you have to recognize that those are tied together. We can't be debating basic human dignity here. If people deserve to be starved.
Do you think the people who were murdered and raped and taken hostage on October 7th were given basic human dignity?
Of course
because
not.
I don't.
Those are war crimes. Obviously should be punished.
Scott Jennings starts chastising Caribou, and she says, those are war crimes. What happened on October 7th? I see people on the left have denounced this over and over and over and over again, but all Scott Jennings can do is look at one side. It's black and white. One side is completely correct. One side is completely wrong. He's just not going to pay any attention, Scott Jennings, that Caribou denounced October 7th. You can say that while also saying, what Israel is doing now cannot be condoned.
It was mass starvation.
And I heard the firsthand stories of the people who had family members murdered and taken hostage, who had sexual atrocities committed against them.
Do you think they want children to starve to death?
Scott,
they were treated like animals.
Obviously, the perpetrators of October 7th are despicable.
And they're still in charge.
Hold on. The perpetrators of October 7th are despicable. But the question is, are you holding a 3-month-old baby who is starving to death accountable for things that baby did not do?
No, I'm holding Hamas accountable.
Okay, so that's why.
You know what?
That's why the question is so important here at this table. Look, I want to have this conversation with respect for everybody involved, but it's so important to remember that we are not talking about talking points. We are talking about human beings, and there are people who are starving, children who are starving in Gaza today, who had absolutely nothing to do with what happened on October 7th. And I hope that there's a part in our minds that can hold those ideas together at the same time, because if there is not, then I think that there's something being lost in terms of our collective humanity.
I believe everybody here at this table feels more pain for those kids than Hamas of their own kids.
Of course they do. Of course they do, but we are in the wealthiest country of the world. Israel is our ally and our partner. We have leverage here. The question is, why aren't we using it? Peter, last word.
The irony is that although Israel has destroyed most of the hospitals and most of the schools and most of the universities and most of the bakeries and most of the agriculture, you know what it has not destroyed? It has not destroyed Hamas. The outgoing head of the Shin Bet, Israel's domestic security service, said just last week that Israel cannot destroy Hamas. Hamas now is using weapons that are from Israel's own ordinance that it has dropped. This war has destroyed so many Palestinian lives, and it has not destroyed Hamas. That is the irony. You guys are talking about how much you hate Hamas. I hate Hamas just as much as you. Hamas is still there. The Palestinian people are starving to death.
They're severely degraded.
They're not severely degraded. They have so many new fighters because of people taking revenge for what Israel has done to their families.
Peter Beinart, thank you very much for joining us.
So very well said in the end there by Abby Phillip. And again, Scott Jennings can't even bring himself to express any kind of compassion or empathy for the Gazan children. It's absolutely disgusting. And Abby Phillip says there, the United States has leverage. I totally agree with her. The United States should have leverage, but the United States chooses not to use that leverage. And Scott Jennings would say, well, what can the United States do? We can't do anything about this foreign country. I've said it over and over again in the video. Stop giving money and weapons to Israel. And I agree with the president of Ireland, who says it's time for the UN to go in and distribute all of this food. And if Israel has any problem of that, then that's viewed as an act of war against the UN. But let me know what you think about all of this. I don't understand how Scott Jennings can go on Abby Phillip's show on CNN and say these kind of things with a straight face. Of course, he's always smirking and sighing and rolling in his eyes as usual. But I don't know how you could be this one-sided, that you care nothing about innocent children. But let me know what you think about this. Maybe you're on the side of Scott Jennings. Maybe you agree with him. Or do you agree with Abby Phillip and Caribou, as I do? Let me know what you think in the comments about all of this. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.